Carol Roth. Welcome to the program. How are you, Carol?
Oh, just watching the market implode and, watching the lies come out of the White House. So just kind of another day under building back better, Glenn. How about you?
I know. Oh, great. Let me ask you a question. I've taken money out of the stock market, but I also have gotten burned before by taking it out and then, missing the upside, et cetera, et cetera. And my guy who, watches over my investments, he's like, Glenn, it's going to come back. It's not. And I'm like, I know it will come back. But, I'm nearing 60. So if it's back in 10 years, I'm going to start needing that money. Should you have any money? I took about 50% out. Should you have any money in the market at this point? Have any idea what's coming?
Yeah. So, obviously this is not financial advice. And I think that you did the right thing by talking to your financial advisor, because obviously it makes, a difference if you're closer to retirement or if you're somebody who's younger and has the time to wait it out. The reality is we don't know. If I knew and I had this crystal ball, I'd be in a yacht on the Mediterranean and not on your program, as much as I adore you, Glenn. But that's what I would be doing.
No, I know. I wouldn't have a program.
So the reality is, they show you over long periods of time that the people who take money out of the market tend to miss the biggest up days in the market. In these bear market situations, there are these kind of bull rallies that happen. And if you miss the 10 best days of the market over, a 10 or 20 year period, that ends up killing the returns that you get on your portfolio. So I do think, especially if you have a longer time horizon, that you should not panic. You never want to be the one who's selling when the market is down. That's when you want to be buying. Not that I'm saying to buy today, but you should be also hedging your portfolio and maybe realigning it. And I think it's a good time to maybe look at the types of investments you have in your portfolio. If you are looking at these high-flying growth companies with weak balance sheets, that don't make any money, those are the ones that are going to struggle. If they have these rock-solid balance sheets, they generate tons of cash. They're in an industry that can pass price increases onto the consumer. Those are the ones who are going to survive, and they're ultimately going to thrive. So, that's the kind of thing you should be talking to your financial advisor about, is maybe repositioning the portfolio right now.
So what's really crazy because of ESG, right now would be the time, if I'm not mistaken, Wall Street. But right now would be the time that you would think you've got to get into oil and gas because they're going to make a killing. They'll invest and they'll bring, will start to really boom and they'll make a killing on it. But that's not true anymore because the market is not free. Oil and gas, is that even smart to do that now?
So it depends on your perspective. I'm a follow the money kind of person. And obviously, like you said, the ESG push, the green push, the decarbonization push is so entrenched. That they're going to throw more money at that. And they've been keeping money from these sort of traditional areas of investment. So the question you have to ask yourself, and again, I wish I could tell you the answer. I can only tell you what to think about in terms of the question, is do you think that we're going to see a reversal of course? Because right now, part of the reason that everything is so expensive is because we have had all of this capital being directed away from the industry, and there's severe underinvestment in all types of fossil fuels and traditional energy sources. So the play that you're going to have to go through in your mind is, do you think something is going to change, or, eventually here we get some temporary relief and then the green people continue to march on and, completely kill our dependence on fossil fuels?
What is frightening is that letter that came from Biden yesterday where he said to the oil companies, I have emergency orders where I will begin to direct this. This is what Hugo Chavez did, and it was over for Venezuela.
Okay, so let's go back, into, whatever it is, 50, 60 years ago. Venezuela was the fourth wealthiest country in the world. And like you said, their powers that be said, we have wealth inequality. We need to hand this over to the government. We'll make sure that you are all rich. And they nationalized oil and a bunch of industries. Do you know what the median net worth in Venezuela is today, Glenn?
I'm afraid. No, I don't.
It's zero. I am not making this up. This comes from the Credit Suisse report on world wealth. The median net worth, they went from the fourth wealthiest country in the world to a median net worth, not even an average, a median of zero. The midpoint of the country's net worth is zero because they nationalized the oil and gas industry and the wealth. And that is the trajectory they want to take us down here.
So, Carol, is it unreasonable to say, I mean, you know, Biden is lying to us about gas and oil and ESG and all of that stuff. He's just out and out lying to us. Is it unreasonable to say that that's the way you get people to own nothing by 2030?
I mean, it's certainly one huge element of it. I mean, just think of if we had some retraction of our energy where one day a week we couldn't, have enough energy to power electricity or to get us to where we need to be. And we all had to move to 4-day work weeks. Think of the productivity that we would lose. Think of how our GDP would shrink. Think of the rolling consequences of that throughout the economy. And yeah, that's a really good way to start, killing the ownership of people. But Glenn, they have so many different ways they are trying to attack you and make sure that you own nothing. That's just one of the tools in their pocket.
I will tell you, I'm up here at my ranch, and I am surrounded. I live in a town of very, very small. I mean, the next biggest town over is 5,000. And it is... it's all ranchers. I mean, it's all farmers and regular people, dairymen, and they're all terrified. I mean, they can't buy fertilizer. Water is already at a premium, and now the state of Washington and the state of Idaho is talking about taking down the dams, which would destroy the energy here, and it would destroy all of the water. I live in a desert. Okay, it's a high mountain desert. A lot of farms and cattle are here. And on top of that, they're also expressing to me fear that they'll even be able to keep their land.
I think these are real concerns, and I hope the place that you're in is Galt's Gulch because we've been looking for it for quite some time. But the reality is that the wealthiest people in the United States, the Bill Gateses, the Harvard hedge fund, they have all been buying up not only land, but water rights. So it's something that we do need to keep a very close eye on because the question is, why do they think this is such a good investment? They're looking for return on their investment. So what do they think is going to happen with the prices that they're making investments in farmland and in water rights? It's an area, it's one of those, I'll call it a dark gray swan because obviously we've talked about it, but really not enough people are focused on it. And, to the extent that, you've got this rationing of water on top of everything else. I mean, I can't even imagine that scenario and the social unrest that comes with that.
So we have 30-year mortgage rates. They were last week 5.5%. This week, they're now at 6.28%. And the Fed raised the rates yesterday. What is this going to mean?
I do think they came down a little bit intraday, but yeah, it's still very high. This is a very challenging question. And the challenging question is because we have such a supply and demand imbalance in the housing market. Again, because of all the idiotic things that the powers that be have done over the past couple of decades. So we have an undersupply of its estimated 4 to 5+ million houses. And that's what has supported, these high prices in housing. Plus, you have all of these corporate buyers who are flush with cash who are coming in and they are buying up. Talk about, you will own nothing. They are buying up housing, the thing that makes people, gain generational wealth. And they're doing doing it with all cash, so they don't need a mortgage. And sometimes they're not even looking. They're not even doing an inspection. So they're getting, very, very favorable outcomes. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of what happens with the housing industry, the mortgage rates are going to keep first-time buyers and people who are just, able to afford out of the market even further. They were already hurt because of the inflated asset bubble. Whether that means we'll certainly see some cooling off. I don't think we're going to see like a 2008, 2009 type implosion because we just don't have enough houses. And I don't think right now people are over leveraged.
So over 1 in 5 Canadians expect rising interest rates to have significant negative impact. 1 in 4 say that they will be forced to sell their home if interest rates are increasing any further. So it's not as bad as I thought it was. 1 in 4. Is Canada different than we are? Do they don't have a shortage of homes?
So Canada has a massive shortage of homes. They have a very different scenario than we have here because they have even more foreign investment that has come in, particularly from China, on a even lower supply of homes. So there's a great chart, and I was trying to find it during the break, and I'm gonna have to circle back on that one, but I'll put it back into my Twitter stream. But there is this incredible chart that shows the median income for Canada versus home value versus the US. And the home values compared to the incomes in Canada are so out of whack vis-a-vis where the U.S. is that absolutely they are much, much more in an area of a crisis. And I have friends who are in Canada and they go, yeah, my house is worth all this money, but I can't sell it because where am I going to go? I have nowhere else to go and downsize into. So that is a really big issue that is different for them in a bad way versus here in the U.S.
Carol, there was this really nasty socialist extremist group that we exposed that is pretty much running the agenda of the White House. At least I think they gave the president, I think it was a list of 10 or 20 things, and he's done almost all of them verbatim, except for the last one on the list is just declare a national emergency. And it's on climate. And it makes me so nervous to see him so willing to say to the gas and oil companies yesterday that this is an emergency and he will declare an emergency and just take things over. That's what he's been saying and leading to for climate change. I think this is going to affect an emergency with food as well. And then eventually jobs. What does it mean that the Fed rate has now, or the Fed growth is down at 0.0? I think that's intentional so we don't have a month in headed towards a recession. But what are we facing?
I mean, we're facing a bunch of people who are completely disconnected with reality. And like you said, they may be the puppets of nefarious actors. It makes absolutely no sense. And it's so frustrating because, yes, we do have an emergency and they're the ones that caused it. And they could get us out of this emergency. They could shore up economic security. They could shore up national security by just doing a 180 on policy. It's pretty clear if you're saying there is an emergency here, we need to do something, but it's not just an emergency today, it's an emergency for the long term. So it would be really great for them to say, you know what, we understand maybe we got this wrong, or, we're in a different situation if they don't want to admit that they're wrong, and we're going to continue the green agenda. But we don't want to have fossil fuels come out of Venezuela or the Middle East or these countries who are going to do it in a fashion that's less clean. We want to lead the way with the clean fossil fuels, and we're going to become the leader. We're going to shore up your economic security. We're going to shore up national security. We're going to shore up the security for our allies, and that's our plan going forward. And I don't care. Take credit for it. Pretend this was your great, brainstorm, and none of us knew this. If you want the credit for it, I don't care. I just want to make sure we don't have all of those things that you talked about, the food insecurity, the rolling blackout, the social unrest that comes with that, and that leading us into full-scale global war. I mean, that is potentially where we are headed, and he could change all of that today.
The problem is people keep saying they won't admit that they're wrong, but I am, and maybe it's the cynic in me, but I've just seen too much. I don't believe they are wrong. I think they're getting the results that they want. This is too perfect in destroying the country. You know what I mean? You can't be wrong this consistently.
What would you do differently
Carol,
if you were trying to do it intentional?
Yeah, exactly right. Carol Roth, thank you so much for being on with us. We'll talk to you again next week about cryptocurrency, etc. You can follow her at Carol J. Roth on Twitter or find her website, carolroth.com.